Ladies and gentlemen, we are now facing the global fear all over the world that threatens our life. And death is the nightmare for all of us. It is COVID-19 pandemic. This pandemic presses us to think about surviving the life with a sudden new condition. We could see that some people lost their job, some people had bankruptcy, and some people suffered themselves to work with the decreasing amounts of payments. This condition could trigger us to have a problem with our mental health, and the problem is anxiety. Anxiety is the condition where we feel worried about the future and fear about the current events. However, every cloud has a silver lining. I believe that every hard situation has their own solution, and it will not be exception for the anxiety through this pandemic period. But what is the effects of the anxiety through this pandemic period? And how can we cope with this kind of problem? Well, let's go to my explanation. As I have said earlier that anxiety is the condition where we feel worried about the future and fear about the current events, some research stated that when we feel anxious, our mind triggers us to think and make a decision carelessly. How can it be? Well, based on the neuroscientists say that when we feel anxious, our mind releases the cortisol hormone that disrupts the function of PFC or prefrontal cortex. And for your information, prefrontal cortex has the function to manage reaction of the potential threats and fear. So when we feel anxious, our PFC cannot really work very well, and it tends to push us to have a problem with our decision making. So be careful for that. Based on that explanation, we've seen a lot of people got anxious. A lot of people had made a worse decision too. Back to the first pandemic period. It was something new for us, I know it. No one can sure about how to deal with this kind of problem, how to deal with the coronavirus. And it makes us totally depend on the information that's updated about the coronavirus itself. How pity, not all of the information is right at that time. Not all of the information is good. And we believe that. Well, I remember when it comes to the information that mentioned coronavirus can only be caused by the surgery mask. Just by that way, at that time, surgery mask has a scarcity. Even the health personnel had the difficulties to find it. In fact, when we wear the ordinary mask, it's okay. We're still alive, right? Because the coronavirus cannot easily infect someone. It's not that easily way. So be careful. Anxiety could trigger us to make a worse decision like that. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's time for us to take these matters seriously. I think it's time for us to cope with this kind of problem, because this problem affects individuals in many different levels. Okay, here I sincerely want to give you some solutions. To begin with, let's see the source of the anxiety itself. Commonly, we feel anxious because we have a lot of information that overwhelmed us. I know it. And we believe on the information that is wrong, or we usually call it as a hoax. It can be a search information via WhatsApp, and we believe that. Well, it can be cliche, but it is very important to know the source of the information, because the information we consume will react our mind whether we have to be calm or attack. So if we didn't do filtering to the information, then the first pandemic will just begin again. So be careful. Knowing the source of information is the very important thing. Okay, the last. Sometimes the source of anxieties can be personal. It's from ourselves that consider we are useless, we don't know what we have to do, we don't know our role in this society. Well, I know the factor is the main factor because our government restricts our movement. We have to stay at home, we have to keep the distance, we can't go to the mall, everywhere. But let's not focus on the thing we cannot control. Let's focus on the thing we can control. We are all have our role. At least we obeying the government protocol, it means that we still have the role. If you have a hobby that, for example, you love to learn new language, just learn new language. Who knows, it can be helps someone. Try to find a community, improving your skill. Try to find a community from the social media, it will very great. So, knowing your role is one of the important things of your life in this pandemic moment. Well, this is the last time of my speech, the last section for exact of my speech, and I will give you a conclusion. Okay, once again, every cloud has a silver lining. I believe that every hard situation has their own solution. And in this kind of moment, when we feel anxious in this kind of period, knowing the source of information and knowing our role is something that is important for us. Let's focus on the thing we can control. Let's not focus on the thing we cannot control. Just do what we have to do. I am Monica Tasria and I am the one who cares for this. Are you with me?